Hey folks, welcome to chapter two of the HR text. First of all, I want to apologize. The chapter one video was a little bit longer than it should have been, actually a lot longer. So I'm going to try and make sure I get through this one a lot quicker. So that one was just kind of a general overview of HR. This one is more about the trends that are happening in human resource management. And again, I want to make sure I explain this each time. This is applies directly to general management as well as HR management. And so when we think about the trends in human resource management, I want you to think about these are really the trends in human resources, right? Outside of the department. These are just the trends happening with the people that we employ. Okay. So we're going to look at what the workforce changes are and how organizations are responding to these. One of the first things I want you to think about is um, in your own organization, how has HR trends evolved or changed over the last 5 years? Really think about this as you go through this chapter. So, the first thing we want to think about um, is external versus internal labor force, right? So the people that are external from our organization, the people that are working within our organization, right? So internal labor force is organizations, employees. They're also contract workers, and they're drawn initially from an external market, typically, right? And then the external labor market is actively seeking employment. So people who are actively seeking employment and determines availability of human resources. So, again, the internal labor force are people who are currently working with us, whether they're full-time employees or part-time employees or contract workers, right? And then typically, not typically, always they're drawn from the external market. When we look at the external labor market, those are people typically actively seeking work, right? Not passive candidates, but typically actively seeking. And those people determine what's our availability for new employees. Okay. That's basically what we get out of that. Uh, Aging workforce challenges. So, folks, this is real. We are an aging workforce. Okay. And so this is a trend that companies have to deal with. And so the trends are 55 plus fastest growing segment, right? So the baby boomers and Gen Xers are the fastest growing segment of employees. We're decreasing in ages 16 to 24. So that age group of 16 to 24 is decreasing. Younger people aren't going to work as much as they were. The other trend that we see is there's a lot of career plateaus. One, people just don't want to go into management. A lot of people feel like it's just a pain. And so why would I want to put myself through that? I just want to be an individual contributor. Okay. So we have an older workforce. We have a younger uh, uh, potential workforce that isn't engaging in the workforce. And then we have people that just either have plateaued because they don't have the skills or they have chosen to plateau. The considerations to this is we need to do retirement planning. From an HR perspective, we need to do retirement planning, right? And so we need to make sure that we do this in a way that, yes, benefits the employee, but also benefits the organization, which means we really need to retain our older workers. Some people just don't want to retire. So if they're still good, we want to keep them because, again, if we have a decreasing younger workforce, we need to increase our older workforce. And then we also need to realize that we need to figure out a way to mitigate the rising benefit costs. The older our workforce gets, the more it costs for a company to benefit them, particularly when it comes to health insurance and life insurance. So, those are just some trends that we need to be aware of. We have an aging workforce, and so that creates a multitude of challenges. The other thing is, if we look at it from a perspective uh, of from a graph perspective, right? This is what it looks like, right? So 25 to 54 year olds, it hasn't really changed that much, and won't change that much, right? We will have people for some reason, again, 16 to 24 year olds. they're either still in high school, not looking to work because they're maybe doing sports or whatever. They're in extracurricular activities, or maybe their parents just don't want them to work. And then college students, we have a lot more students going to college. And so if that's the case, up into the time they're 24 and they find that first job, they're really not going to probably enter the workforce until maybe their first internship. So as of 2021 and to 2031, everything looks pretty much the same, which is really disheartening. We should see a growing number of 16 to 24 year olds, ideally, which we don't. Actually, we see a shrinking of them. It's moving from 12.8 to 11.3. And then our 55 and older are staying about the same. And in fact, we're seeing a slight increase. We're seeing a slight increase. Okay. And so when I think about this, again, how should organizations adapt their talent acquisitions for this demographic shift? If we're not having younger people enter the workforce until they're 25, until they basically finish college, what does that look like and how do we accommodate for it? Next, there's a multi-generational workforce, which creates multiple problems. You've got baby boomers all the way down to Gen Zs working together. And what does that look like, right? Do we appreciate each other's differences or do we despise each other's differences? You'll hear it all the time where, hey, I'm going to a training on multi-generational management, or hey, we're responsible to go to this seminar. There is so much money being made right now in consulting for this specific issue. How to figure out to get older people and younger people to work together. Okay. So today's workplace brings together 4 to 5 different generations. A lot of them part-time arrangements for older workers, right? What do we do? Unique generation values and habits. Again, how is HR addressing this? A lot of the younger folks want to work remotely. A lot of the older folks want to work remotely or part-time. And so, how do we make that fit together? How do we get people who are high tech, the Gen Zers and millennials, how do we get their high tech knowledge into the hands of our Gen Xers and our baby boomers, right? And so, there's a lot of things that can be shared. We just need to do a better job of it. Retirement expectations, right? So early retirement is typically 55 to 60 is early retirement. Okay. Financial readiness or career change, right? A lot of times these are the challenges that we have to deal with. So early retirement, this is what we consider that, right? Traditional age retirement, 65. This is when Social Security kicks in. And this is going to get older, folks. They're talking about pushing it to 67 to get your full retirement, your full Social Security benefits. Okay. So you've got people who are doing early retirement, 55 to 60, right? You've got people who retire traditionally at 65. You've got people who want to continue to work till they're 70 plus. I know lots of people, not just in higher education, in business, who are 70 plus, who are still active members in their company and doing amazing work. So, do you stay longer? Because it's a lot of time for people. That's what keeps them going is the work that they do. And then there's other people who will just never retire. They will work until the day they die. And it could be because that's their identity is driven by their career, or they just have financial needs. It's more expensive to live now, folks, and the longer we live, the more expensive it gets. And so these are kind of the retirement expectations in the not just in the future, but now. Workforce diversity trends. To me, this is one of the most important conversations to have because for me, diversity in everything within the workforce is of utmost importance. Okay, so the more diverse our employee base is, the more successful we are going to be. You don't want a lot of, a bunch of homogenous work groups who just say yes to each other. We need people who are willing to challenge the status quo, challenge expectations, bring something different to the team. Okay. And so the key trends are growing racial and ethnic diversity, multiracial, which is the fastest growing group, and Hispanic, which is the fastest growing ethnic group, immigration impact, affects labor supply and demand. We need to have, I don't know, years. I'm old and I've been talking about this for years and years and years. We need to have relevant immigration policy change where we can bring in people. We have a shrinking workforce. I just showed you this right here. We have a shrinking workforce right here. Young people don't want to come to work, right? And so we need to fill that gap, and we need to fill it with potentially, like other countries are doing, with new immigration policies, right? And so if we look here, you know, uh, uh, in the next 40 years, or the next actually year, the next 25 years, we're going to see, shrinking population of race in the white, right? We're going to see the black community stay about the same in the workforce, rising Asian makeup in the workforce, and then all other. This is the one that I love, though, right here. So, in 2010, 85% all workers were non-Hispanic workers, and only 15% were Hispanic. Now, this is going to double within the next 25 years. This is going to double. And so it just shows we need to be prepared and we need to be inclusive in this, right? A lot of times, particularly from a company perspective, we need to be thinking about ways that we can engage people of different races, people of different ethnic communities to come in and work for us because again, they bring great resources. They bring a different mindset, and it's amazing. That's what we need to be innovative. I'll stop talking about that. This is just one of the things that just really drives me is we need a new improved immigration policy, and we've needed one for years. So I'll leave it at that. Workforce skills division. We're different now, right? Where in the past we our skill deficiency we're in physical strength and machinery mastery. That was during, right, industrial revolution up until probably the 70s and 80s. That's what mattered. Now what we're lacking, mathematical skills, verbal written communication, interpersonal skills, decision making skills, and technology fluency. The interpersonal skills are the ones that really are lacking. The smartphone has really killed our ability to meet face to face and have meaningful, decent conversations with people. And so, social media hasn't been great at that as well. And so, these are the things that we need now. We're no longer living in the past. Moving on, training, you know, there's this upskilling piece. We need to get people better than they were, right? And then reskilling. People need to acquire new skills. The pandemic accelerated this. People had to learn how to work remotely on a moment's notice. People had to work on Zoom at a moment's notice. All of a sudden, people are just changing their entire work style, right? And so, pandemic was terrible, but it created opportunities for people to reskill and upskill. And so again, this is a really critical part of making sure that we're doing what we need to do to stay relevant. Employee empowerment. This is another trend that's really critical, right? The core concept, employees make more decisions. They share in results, in losses and rewards. So employees want to have a bigger impact, and they want to partake in the rewards of success, right? That's the big concept about empowerment. The benefits of that, increased innovation. If you give employees an opportunity to speak up and participate more, you're going to get increased innovation. You're going to get better idea sharing. You're going to get a higher engagement, and you're going to get improved productivity. Managers manage, employees do. There's a great mindset of managers should be in the balcony at 30,000 feet observing, give the work back to the employees. Google was famous for this. 3M was famous for this. Let employees create and you help them, you support them in that creativity. You'll see benefits and they'll see benefits, and you'll see the best people staying at your organizations longer. Strategic management, right? High quality stand, like this is how are HR folks involved in strategic management, right? cost controls. They help managers understand how they can save on employee costs. High quality standards. We want to hire the best people, right? That's what they're about. During mergers and acquisitions, HR is heavily involved. How do we work with displaced employees from a purchased company? How do we maybe integrate them into our culture if we're merging with them, if we're acquiring with them? How do we make sure that, again, two separate cultures are brought together? So HR is uh, essential when it comes particularly to mergers and acquisitions. And then how do we help them expand into global markets? How do we work with global HR leaders to make sure that our policies and procedures, our employees feel engaged when potentially they're traveling to work with one of our foreign subsidiaries. So HR is innately involved in all these strategic policies. Uh, Other strategic HR initiatives, quality management, right? TQM focuses on customer needs. Employees drive that. Again, I will go back to Southwest Airlines. Herb Kelleher said, "Take care of the employees. Employees will take care of the customers." Same thing with Toyota. Toyota, where TQM came for, Toyota Quality Management. We hire the best people, we train them the best, we develop them the best, we keep them, and then they will take care of our companies, our customers, and then they will innovate. Again, in mergers and acquisition, HR resolves conflicts between company practices, and then finally cost control measures, downsizing, re-engineering, outsourcing. All this is done through HR guidance. Global HR considerations, right? Do we offshore? Do we move operations to lower cost countries? What does that look like from an HR perspective? Reshoring. Maybe we bring back, maybe the market is such now that we can bring back. HR, they're the ones that should stay in tune with this. And then how do we employ expats, right? If we have employees working in other countries, how do we support them? That's a big thing now. And then finally, technology in HR. Again, I already said if you're thinking about going into human resource management, if you're thinking about being an HR professional, look at HRIS certification, right? There's so many technical components to SHRM certification. That's the Society for Human Resource Management. An HRIS certification. Those are extremely important, right? HR information systems improve accuracy, support strategic decisions, and all the cloud computing expands the use. People analytics, AI improves HR decisions, self-service access, and then performance dashboards. If you work within Workday or PeopleSoft, you have access to your dashboard. It makes it so much easier for you as an employee to sometimes manage your own dashboard to see what's going on with your vacation, with your W-2, with your deductions, all that stuff. You can see that from a PeopleSoft or a Workday dashboard. And so that's all part of the technology that's changing HR. That one was pretty quick, folks. If you again have any questions going forward, feel free to reach out uh, and have a good rest of your week.